Mia stood in the small bedroom that still smelled like her grandmother. The air carried a soft mix of old wood, clean soap, and dried flowers. The window was open, and warm light touched the floor slowly, like it was careful not to disturb anything. This room had stayed the same for many years, even when everything outside had changed. In front of her stood the old dresser. It was tall and wide, made of dark wood that had lost its shine. The surface was full of thin scratches and faded marks. One corner had a small crack. The handles were loose and slightly bent. It did not look valuable. It looked tired. Mia crossed her arms and looked at it for a long time. She had already decided what to do. The house needed to be cleaned. Most things were already gone. Old clothes were packed and given away. Broken items were thrown out. Papers were sorted carefully. This dresser was the last big thing left in the room. Her grandmother had owned this house for more than 40 years. Mia grew up visiting it during holidays. She remembered sitting on the bed while her grandmother brushed her hair. She remembered stories told in the evenings. But now the house felt quiet, like it was holding its breath. Mia walked closer and touched the top of the dresser. Dust covered her fingers. She wiped her hand on her jeans and sighed. She told herself that keeping everything was not the same as keeping memories. Memories lived inside, not inside furniture. She opened the first drawer. It was empty. She pulled the second one. Also empty. The third drawer slid open with a soft sound. Nothing inside. Mia nodded slowly. This confirms it, she thought. She bent down to open the bottom drawer. It felt heavier than the others. When she pulled, it did not move at first. She pulled again, a little harder. The drawer opened with a long wooden sound. Mia stopped breathing. Inside the drawer were things she had never seen before. A folded cloth lay on top, pale and thin with age. Under it was a small wooden box. The box was dark and smooth, shaped carefully by hand. It did not look forgotten. It looked placed. Mia knelt down slowly. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something she could not explain. She picked up the folded cloth first. It was a scarf. She recognized it immediately. Her grandmother used to wear it early in the morning when the air was cold. Mia lifted it to her face without thinking. The smell made her chest tighten. She placed the scarf aside and reached for the wooden box. It was heavier than it looked. No lock. No writing. Just a simple box. For a moment, Mia hesitated. She felt like she was standing at the edge of something important. She looked around the room. The bed was neatly made. The curtains moved softly with the wind. Everything looked normal, but it did not feel normal. She opened the box. Inside were several envelopes tied together with a thin ribbon. Beneath them was a small notebook. The pages were yellow and soft, like they had been touched many times. Mia picked up the notebook carefully. The handwriting on the first page was her grandmother's. Mia knew it instantly. Her grandmother's handwriting was simple and steady. Not perfect. Not messy. Just real. Mia had seen it on notes, on shopping lists, on small reminders. But this felt different. This was not a reminder. This was something personal. Mia sat down on the floor. The room felt quieter now. She opened the notebook and began to read. The words were calm. The sentences were clear. Dates were written at the top of each page. Some pages had small dried flowers pressed between them. Some had tiny drawings of houses and roads. Others were filled completely with writing. Mia did not read everything at once. She moved slowly, page by page. Each line felt like a voice speaking directly to her. Her grandmother wrote about daily life, about choices, about moments that mattered. Some entries were happy. Some were thoughtful. None were careless. Mia felt something warm and heavy in her chest. She placed the notebook back into the box and picked up the envelopes. Each one had a name written on it. Some names were familiar. Others were not. One envelope had her own name written clearly across the front. Mia's hands shook. She stared at the envelope for a long time. She remembered her grandmother as someone who spoke gently but did not explain everything. She believed some things did not need to be said until the right time. Mia understood now that this might be that time. She did not open the envelope yet. She placed it back carefully. She closed the box and held it close. The dresser no longer looked old. It no longer looked useless. It looked important. She looked at the bottom drawer again. This place had been chosen. This was not an accident. Her grandmother had hidden these things for a reason. Mia stood up slowly and pushed the drawer closed. She placed the box on the bed and sat beside it. Her thoughts moved fast, but her body stayed still. She realized something very clear. If she had thrown the dresser away, this story would have disappeared forever. The house was quiet, but it was no longer empty. Something had been waiting for her all this time. Something patient. Something meaningful. And this was only the beginning. Mia sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, holding the wooden box in her lap. The room felt different now. It was the same walls, the same window, the same quiet air, yet something unseen had changed. It felt like the room was watching her, waiting for her next move. She took a deep breath and placed the box on the bed. Her fingers rested on the lid again. The envelope with her name stayed in her mind. She knew it was there. She knew it was meant for her. Still, she did not open it yet. Instead, she picked up the notebook. She opened it slowly and began reading from the first page. Her grandmother wrote about simple days. She wrote about waking up early and making tea. She wrote about sitting near the window and watching people pass by. The words were plain, but they felt strong. Mia turned page after page. Some entries talked about mistakes. Some talked about hope. Her grandmother wrote honestly, never hiding fear or joy. She wrote about choices that changed her life, even when those choices were hard. Mia realized something important. Her grandmother had lived a life full of quiet strength. She never talked about it much. She never wanted attention. She just kept moving forward. As Mia read, she noticed certain names repeating. One name appeared again and again. It was a name Mia had never heard before. Each time it appeared, the writing felt heavier. Mia stopped reading and closed the notebook gently. She looked at the envelopes again. Each envelope held a story. Each one carried weight. She reached for the envelope with her name. Her heart beat faster as she opened it carefully. Inside was a letter folded neatly. Mia unfolded it and began to read. The letter was written in the same steady handwriting. It spoke directly to her. Her grandmother wrote about love and patience. She wrote about waiting for the right time. She said some truths needed silence before they could be understood. She wrote that Mia had always been curious, always searching for meaning. The letter explained that the box was not meant to be found too early. It was meant to be found when Mia was ready to see life clearly. Mia felt tears in her eyes, but she did not cry. She kept reading. Her grandmother wrote about the house. She wrote about why it was kept the same for so long. She wrote about memories hidden inside ordinary things. She asked Mia not to rush, not to throw things away without listening first. At the end of the letter, her grandmother wrote one simple line. Everything you need to understand is already near you. Mia folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. She stared at the wooden box again. The other envelopes now felt heavier than before. She knew she could not stay in the bedroom forever. She carried the box into the living room and placed it on the table. The house was quiet, but not lonely. Sunlight filled the room, touching the walls gently. Mia walked through the house. She looked at things she had already cleaned and sorted. A chair by the window. A clock on the wall. A shelf full of books. She realized she had seen them before but never truly looked at them. She returned to the box. This time, she picked an envelope with a familiar name. It belonged to someone who used to visit the house often when Mia was younger. She opened it slowly. Inside was another letter. This letter told a story about friendship and regret. It spoke about a promise that was never fulfilled. It explained why some people disappeared from their lives quietly, without anger or blame. Mia felt a strange mix of emotions. She realized her grandmother had carried many stories alone. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. Mia spent the rest of the afternoon reading. She did not rush. She read carefully, letting each word settle. The house grew darker as the sun moved away. Shadows stretched across the floor. When night came, Mia turned on a small lamp. She sat near the table, still holding the notebook. Her thoughts moved slowly now. She understood something very clearly. Her grandmother had not hidden these things out of fear. She had hidden them out of trust. She trusted that one day Mia would be strong enough to read them without breaking. Mia closed the box again. She did not feel tired. She felt awake. She stood up and looked around the living room. This house was more than wood and walls. It was a map of choices, love, and quiet courage. Mia knew there was more to learn. The notebook was not finished. The envelopes were not empty. And the name that appeared again and again in the pages still had no face. She carried the box back to the bedroom and placed it beside the dresser. The dresser no longer looked like something to throw away. It looked like a door that had just opened. Mia lay down on the bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the words she had read. She felt closer to her grandmother than she ever had before. Tomorrow, she would read more. Tomorrow, she would search for answers. The past was no longer silent. It was speaking now. Morning light entered the bedroom quietly. Mia opened her eyes before the alarm. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the old dresser, the wooden box beside it, and everything returned to her mind. She sat up slowly and took a deep breath. The house felt calm, like it was giving her space to think. She washed her face, made a simple breakfast, and returned to the bedroom with a clear mind. Today, she decided, she would read everything. Mia sat on the floor near the dresser and opened the box again. She picked up the notebook first. She turned to the pages she had not read yet. The handwriting stayed steady, but the words became deeper. Her grandmother wrote about younger days. She wrote about leaving her first home and arriving in this town with only hope and patience. She wrote about working hard, meeting people, and learning when to speak and when to stay silent. Then the writing changed. The same unknown name appeared again. This time, the entries were longer. The feelings were heavier. The words carried distance and care at the same time. Mia felt that this person mattered more than anyone else mentioned before. She read slowly. Her grandmother wrote about trust. She wrote about a promise made long ago. She wrote about choosing safety over truth, and silence over pain. The words never blamed anyone. They only explained choices. Mia stopped reading and closed the notebook. She looked at the envelopes again. There was one envelope left with a name she did not recognize. Her fingers hovered over it for a moment before picking it up. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter written many years ago. The letter spoke about a life that moved in a different direction. It spoke about distance that grew slowly, not suddenly. It explained that some paths run side by side for a while, then quietly separate. The letter ended with a simple wish for peace. Mia placed the letter down and leaned back against the bed. Her thoughts felt heavy but clear. She was beginning to understand something important. Her grandmother had lived with truths that were never shared because sharing them would not have made life better. Silence had been a choice, not a weakness. Mia stood up and walked around the room. She touched the dresser again, this time with care. She remembered how her grandmother always cleaned it slowly, never rushing. It had always been more than furniture. Mia decided to look at the dresser closely. She pulled it away from the wall. Behind it, the wall looked slightly different. There was a faint outline, almost hidden by years of dust and paint. Mia leaned closer. It was a small door. Her heart beat faster. She wiped the surface gently. The door blended into the wall perfectly. It had no handle, just a thin edge where fingers could fit. Mia hesitated. She thought about the letter written to her. Everything you need to understand is already near you. She pressed her fingers against the edge and pulled. The door opened slowly. Inside was a narrow space with a small shelf. On the shelf sat a single photo frame and a folded piece of paper. Mia lifted the frame first. The photo showed her grandmother when she was young. She stood beside another person. They both looked calm, not smiling widely, but peaceful. The other person had kind eyes and a gentle posture. Mia had never seen this photo before. She placed it down carefully and opened the folded paper. It was a short note written in the same familiar handwriting. The note explained that some memories are kept close, not hidden. They are placed where they can be felt, even if they are not seen. The note said the dresser was chosen because it was always near, always trusted. Mia felt a wave of emotion pass through her. Not sadness. Not joy. Understanding. She closed the small door and moved the dresser back into place. It belonged there. The house felt warmer now, like it had finally shared its secret. Mia spent the afternoon cleaning again, but this time slowly. She did not throw things away quickly. She looked at each item and listened to what it held. In the evening, she sat in the living room and read the notebook once more. The words felt lighter now. The weight had shifted into meaning. Mia understood that her grandmother had lived fully, even with unfinished stories. Life did not always need answers. Sometimes it only needed acceptance. She looked around the house and smiled softly. She would not sell the dresser. She would not rush to change the house. Some things were meant to stay. That night, Mia slept deeply. Her dreams were calm. She knew that the past had been honored. And she knew there was still one part left to understand. The next morning arrived with soft rain tapping against the windows. Mia stood near the kitchen sink, holding a warm cup of tea, watching the drops slide down the glass. The house felt alive in a gentle way, like it was breathing with her. She no longer felt like a guest inside it. She felt like a listener. After breakfast, Mia returned to the bedroom. The wooden box rested beside the dresser, calm and familiar. She knelt down and opened it again, not with urgency, but with care. She picked up the notebook and turned to the last section she had not read fully. The writing here felt slower, more thoughtful. Her grandmother wrote about growing older and learning to let things be. She wrote about mornings that felt precious and evenings that felt quiet. She wrote about gratitude for small things like sunlight, warm meals, and steady days. Mia felt comfort as she read. The words were not heavy anymore. They felt like guidance. One page spoke about responsibility. Her grandmother wrote that every generation carries something forward, even if they do not realize it. She wrote that love is often passed through actions, not words. She believed that caring for a place meant caring for the stories inside it. Mia closed the notebook and placed it back into the box. She knew she had read what she needed for now. She stood up and looked at the dresser again. It had become the center of the room, not because it was large, but because it carried meaning. Mia decided to clean it, not to erase time, but to honor it. She wiped the surface gently. She tightened the loose handles. She placed a small cloth under one leg to steady it. Each movement felt careful and respectful. As she worked, memories returned. Her grandmother standing near the dresser, choosing clothes slowly. Her grandmother humming softly. Her grandmother smiling without saying much. Mia realized that silence had been one of her grandmother's strongest tools. Silence allowed space. Silence allowed understanding to grow naturally. Later that afternoon, Mia received a call from a neighbor. The neighbor had known her grandmother for many years. They spoke kindly, sharing small memories and quiet laughs. The neighbor mentioned that her grandmother often talked about the house as if it were a person. Mia smiled when she heard that. After the call ended, Mia sat in the living room and looked around again. She saw the chair by the window and imagined her grandmother resting there. She saw the shelf of books and imagined the slow turning of pages. Mia felt a sense of duty forming inside her. Not a heavy one, but a steady one. She decided to stay in the house longer than planned. That evening, Mia brought a lamp into the bedroom and placed it near the dresser. She placed the photo frame on top, the one hidden behind the wall. It felt right to let it be seen now. She also placed the notebook beside it. The room felt complete. Mia sat on the bed and thought about her own life. She thought about the choices she had made and the ones she avoided. She realized that understanding her grandmother's life helped her understand her own fears and hopes. Her grandmother had lived with patience. She had accepted that not everything needed to be shared or solved. She had trusted time to do its work. Mia felt calmer than she had in years. Before sleeping, Mia wrote a few lines in a new notebook of her own. She wrote about the dresser. She wrote about listening. She wrote about slowing down. She did not know who would read her words one day. She did not need to know. That night, the rain stopped. The house rested quietly. Mia slept with a sense of peace she had not expected. In the morning, sunlight returned. Mia woke up feeling clear. She opened the window and let fresh air fill the room. She stood near the dresser and touched the wood once more. She whispered a quiet thank you, not out loud, but inside. She understood now that the past does not demand attention. It invites respect. It waits patiently for someone willing to listen. Mia left the bedroom and began planning her days ahead. She would clean slowly. She would keep what mattered. She would let go of what no longer served a purpose. The dresser stayed where it was. And so did the stories. The house woke up slowly on the final morning. Soft light moved across the walls, touching every corner with care. Mia stood in the doorway of the bedroom and looked inside one last time before starting her day. The dresser stood quietly, clean and steady, holding its place with calm strength. Mia felt different now. Not lighter, not heavier, but clearer. She made breakfast and sat at the small table near the window. The sound of birds outside filled the space. She realized she no longer felt rushed. The house had taught her how to slow down without effort. After eating, Mia returned to the bedroom and opened the wooden box again. This time, she did not read. She simply looked at the notebook, the letters, and the scarf. She touched each item gently, then placed them back inside. She carried the box to the dresser and slid it into the bottom drawer carefully. The drawer closed smoothly, as if it welcomed the box back home. Mia stepped back and looked at the dresser with a quiet smile. This was where it belonged. She spent the rest of the morning cleaning the house for the last time. She dusted shelves, wiped windows, and folded blankets. But this cleaning felt different from before. It was not about removing the past. It was about preparing space for the future. In the afternoon, Mia sat in the living room and opened her own notebook again. She wrote slowly, choosing her words with care. She wrote about the dresser and how it changed her. She wrote about her grandmother and the strength hidden behind gentle habits. She wrote about listening instead of rushing. Mia understood now that her grandmother had not left her instructions. She had left her an example. Later that day, Mia made a decision. She would not sell the house. She would keep it as a place of rest, a place where time moved at its own pace. A place where memories were allowed to exist without pressure. Mia called a few family members and shared her choice. Some were surprised. Some were understanding. Mia felt steady in her decision. That evening, she moved a chair closer to the bedroom window. She sat there and watched the sky change colors. The dresser stood beside her, silent and present. Mia thought about the younger version of herself, always in a hurry, always searching for something new. She smiled softly at the thought. She realized that sometimes, what people search for is already waiting quietly. As night came, Mia prepared to leave the house for a short time. She packed a small bag and stood in the hallway. Before walking out, she returned to the bedroom one last time. She placed her hand on the dresser and closed her eyes. She felt gratitude. Not for objects, but for understanding. Not for answers, but for peace. Mia turned off the lights and locked the door behind her. The house rested in silence, holding its stories safely. Days later, Mia returned. She opened the door with ease, like someone returning home rather than arriving. The house greeted her with stillness and warmth. She went straight to the bedroom. Everything was just as she left it. The dresser stood firm. The box waited patiently. Mia smiled. She understood now that the dresser was never meant to be thrown away. It was meant to be discovered. It had held memories until the right moment. It had waited without complaint. It had trusted time. Just like her grandmother. Mia placed a small plant on top of the dresser, adding life to its surface. She placed the photo frame beside it. The room felt complete. She stepped back and looked at the dresser one final time, not with curiosity, but with respect. The story had been told. The lesson had been learned. And the dresser would remain, not as furniture, but as a reminder. Some things are not meant to be replaced. They are meant to be understood.